The parable of the talents is what we're going to be talking about. It's probably one of the best known and most important of the stories of Jesus. And it might be helpful if we kind of cut it down to a bare outline, and so we can work with it a little more easily. It's found in Matthew's Gospel, the 25th chapter. Going to be reading verses 14 to 30 from the Living Bible this morning. Matthew 25, 14 to 30. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going into another country who called together his servants and loaned them money to invest for him while he was gone. He gave $5,000 to one, $2,000 to another, and $1,000 to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities, and then left on his trip. The man who received the $5,000 began immediately to buy and sell with it, and soon earned another $5,000. The man with $2,000 went right to work too and earned another $2,000. But the man who received the $1,000, he dug a hole in the ground and hid the money for safekeeping. After a long time, their master returned from the trip and called them to him to account for his money. Well, the man to whom he had entrusted the $5,000 brought him $10,000, and his master praised him for good work. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, he told him, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Begin the joyous task I have assigned to you. Next came the man who had received the $2,000 with the report, Sir, you gave me $2,000 to use and I've doubled it. Good work, his master said. You are a good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over the small amount, so now I will give you much more. Then the man with the $1,000 came and said, Sir, I knew you were a hard man, and I was afraid you would rob me of what I earned. So I hid your money in the earth, and here it is. But his master replied, Wicked man, lazy slave, since you knew I would demand your profit, you should at least have put my money into the bank so I could have some interest. Take the money from this man and give it to the man with the $10,000. For the man who uses well what he is given shall be given more, and he shall have abundance. But from the man who is unfaithful, even what little responsibility he has shall be taken from him. And throw the useless servant out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing teeth. Wow. God's holy word to us today. I want to remind ourselves at the very beginning that this is one of the stories of Jesus. And we have been finding more and more that when we work with the stories of Jesus, we have this wonderful experience to be close to him. So I hope you're feeling ready for a few moments just to be with Jesus this morning. Because we're seeing things as he saw them. We are getting close to what he was trying to communicate to us and the heart of his ministry. So all the different things that are going on in your mind this morning, for just a few moments, if you can just begin to focus and be present to this. The parable this morning on one level is very direct and very obvious. It is, though, a little misleading. I mean, there are many different ways we've been able to interpret the parable. Matthew here put it in the middle of a chapter that has to do with the second coming of Christ. But he was a little confused because at the end he put that saying about use it or lose it, which is really what he is saying, but the two just don't quite connect. Luke, he put it in a completely different setting if he was kind of having a little bit of trouble with the understanding of it himself. So on this first level now, I don't think we're going to have any trouble. A talent was a measure or weight of silver or gold. It was worth about $1,000 in this particular story. So it is money we're talking about. Now the church almost immediately turned the talent into ability. We speak of someone who has the ability for music, or they have a talent for the business world. But it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way we interpret this, whether we think it's about money or it's about our abilities, because what the story seems to be saying is the one who worked really hard and produced and made 5 more, and the one who worked hard and produced 2 more, these men were commended. They brought joy to the heart of their master. But the one who did not, the one who buried the talent, he was called wicked and slothful. Now, have you ever seen a sloth in his native habitat? Have you ever seen one? It is one of the lingering memories on my trip that I took to Cairo. I saw this sloth, and it took this animal 30 minutes just to roll his eyes toward me. I mean, we're talking lazy, really lazy. But that was taken from him. The talent that he had was taken from him, and he's cast into outer darkness. This terrible, terrible punishment. Now, the teaching seems obvious, doesn't it? That God wants us to work, and to work hard and be productive. Isn't that what kind of screams, off the page at first? If you really kind of live with this, work hard, be productive. It doesn't matter whether you've got 5 talents or 2 talents or 1 talent. That's okay. Each according to his ability. You remember that. But what you got, use it. Work hard. Produce. And if there's any message in the New Testament that 21st century Christianity has learned, it's this one. This is the John Calvin worth ethic in parable form. Work hard. Be a self-made man or a self-made woman. Invest. Invest wisely. Put these things to work. This is our parable. This is America's parable. I love the story of the little boy. He went up to his parents, and he wanted to buy a new bike. Well, that takes a lot of money. He says, well, I've got the money. And they thought, oh my, how did he get the money? So he ran back up into his bedroom. He brought out this cigar box, full of money. Parents, of course, feared the worst of what was going on. How did he get that kind of money? Well, he said, I got it at school. Really? Yes, there's a new rule in school. If you don't clean your plate at lunchtime, you get no dessert. So I offered to eat the other kids' vegetables if they paid me. I got 10 cents for spinach, 15 cents for green beans, and 25 cents for sauerkraut. And I've been doing it all year, and now I have a box full of money. Now, we really admire that, don't we? We really admire that boy. That boy's going places, right? He's going to go far with that kind of attitude. He'll carry that over into his adult life, and he'll make it upwardly mobile. He will move. That's what this parable seems to be saying. And if that is where you are right now in your life, if you need to be motivated, if you need to get some drive into what you're doing, God wants you to be productive. That brings joy to the heart of God. So get that talent out of the ground and start putting it to work. Produce. And I've heard this so many times in the sermons about this parable, and that point is really pounded home, to work and do that and all that stuff of this parable. Not only did it make me anxious, but it makes me angry. And I just have to be honest with you about that. Now, why does it make me angry? Well, when I was active in the ministry, when I was doing it full time, I was a borderline workaholic. And many of my friends were borderline workaholics. I think there are a few terminally ill workaholics that I knew. But you think about the life that most of us live, even retired now, but most of us live was we work at work. And I mean, we really work at work. And we work at the church. When we come around the church, we work. Things really hum around here. I tell you, I'm out here, there's something always going on around there, and that's wonderful. That's fantastic, but it's still work. And then we work at play. Have you ever done that? If we ever get time, we work at play. And then we work at being healthy. Have you ever noticed that? We work at being healthy. We really work at that. I once told Barb one time, I will start jogging when I see a jogger smiling. Have you ever seen, even if I hit the wall, I'm going to smile, I said. I never took up jogging, by the way. But we work at that. We take our pulse. We time ourselves. What do we have? What's this thing called? Fitbit? Fitbit, a lot of you wear the calls. You can count the number of steps that you've taken during the day. And all this other stuff, we work at it. I think of the man watching the tennis match, and one of the players was a white-haired, wizened little man, pipe stem legs, tearing around the court, just tearing around the court, beating the ball all over the place. And he was coming off the court, and this man said, "That's wonderful, man. That's really wonderful. How do you do that?" He said, "Well, I really work at keeping fit. I get up in the morning and I run 8 to 10 miles, and then at noontime I go to my club and I work out there, and then in the evening before I go home I take an aerobics class, and then after dinner I jog again." And he went on and on and on. And then the man said, "That's amazing. How old are you?" He says, "I'm 23. Well, I'm standing up here as a 23-year-old wizened old man, I tell you. Work. And I actually feel resentful about this teaching when it's laid on me. Because the parable is saying more. Keep beating that horse. Work. Never be content with what you've done. More, productive, more. God wants more. Well, I wouldn't be sharing my problem with you, except I've talked with so many people over the years, and I know that that's where many of us are. We don't need a parable that says, work. work, work. Now, I believe there is a much deeper truth that includes the importance of being productive, but much more is at stake here. Jesus really tips his hand in the very beginning when he emphasizes that each was given in accordance to his ability. And what brought joy to the master's heart was not so much the product, but that each lived up to his potential. Each was doing what he could. Each was becoming, in a sense, who he was in that setting and what he had, of course. But it's so much wider than that. And as I thought about this and have lived with this parable for a while, it was like a light going on. What Jesus is saying here is that God wants us simply to be who we are. That brings joy to God. That God has given to each of us a unique set of talents and gifts and abilities, each one of us, and that God is always working in that to bring into being this uniquely beautiful person each one of us is. And the greatest joy that comes to each one of us is just to be who we are, not somebody else, not the 5-talent person that we envy, or the 1-talent person maybe we may look down on, or whatever, but just be who we are. And that brings joy to God as well as us. It's almost as if God created you as in the beginning in the book of Genesis, and he looked down at you and said, "That's good. I like that." I hope you can begin to feel that. Just feel that now. Have a sense of that within you, your unique selfhood. To know that this Spirit of God is working in everything that happens. The way you were educated, the environment in your home, the relationship that you had or maybe didn't have. God is able to use all of that to bring into being this self. The part of the miracle to me is that to be a fully complete human being, we have to take risks. You can't bury that in the ground. Life's not like that. You have to take risks to be human. But when you take risks, there's always the possibility of failure. And I failed many times in my life. But part of what keeps me going is that God is weaving that into the finished product. The things that I've learned from failures, the things that God makes possible through all of that, it's all part of it. That's the beauty of it. The power of it working in your relationships. You know, every relationship has this possibility of being part of your essential self. Can you begin to just feel that? That's what this parable is about. And your productivity, yes, is part of that. But the parable is saying so much more. This claiming who you are. No, claim it. Claim it. God wants you to. God finds joy in that. And the discernment, it may mean staying at the job that you now have, but with a different attitude. It may mean finding another job or a different vocation, and that can be threatening in today's market. It may be staying with the relationship that you're in now, or it may mean changing in some cases. We need discernment for all these things that are so threatening, but they're all part of your becoming who you are and claiming that. Well, to me, that's what this parable is about. Now, I just want to say one other thing about it. One of the most loving things that we can do for another person, one of the most powerful parts of our ministry to others, is to enable them to claim who they are, to help with that, to reinforce that, and to celebrate that when we see it happening in another person's life. That is so loving, to help another do that. But you see, that's what we don't do most of the time. We enjoy controlling ones we love so often. We want to be controllers. Do you remember Dear Abby in the paper? Well, this girl wrote, and I kept it because it just reminds me of this. She's Dear Abby, and this is from a girl in college. She said, I love my parents, and I know they love me, but they've ruined my life. I could never tell my parents anything. It was always, I'm too busy, we're right, and you're wrong. That's not important. Listen to me. That's stupid. Your friends are wrong. They're stupid. And as a result, I stopped telling my parents anything. All communications eased. And then she goes on to say how her life is such a mess. She's had an abortion, she's been in the drugs, and she ends by saying, I'm so very confused, but who can I talk to? Not my parents. My parents could read this and never dream it was their daughter. I have only one important plea to everyone. Listen. Listen, and listen again. Please, I know the consequences, and I am in hell. It all starts with listening. You listen and you pick up the signals and the signs from the other person. And the Spirit gives you the strength to be with that. What a gift of love that is to another person, to feel the healing that is in that for you. This is what brings joy to the heart of the Master. Do you remember the movie? It was called Gabby. It's a long time ago, I think. It's about Mabel Gabbarelli, her life story. She was born with cerebral palsy, so paralyzed, so handicapped, but she was able to move her left leg finally, and then her left foot, and she learned, are you ready for this? She learned to type with her left foot. This keen mind and this love for life, feelings that a person has, but her body couldn't express it. All the frustration of that. She had a nurse 24/7. She was always in a wheelchair. The anger against God. She had asked the nurse when she was a very young woman, why did God do this to me? And the nurse, who was a very loving person, said, God has his reasons. Gabby is so enraged against God that she rolls away and screams, and everyone can't believe she's making this noise. Screaming out her rage against a God who has his reasons for doing this to her. Later on, after frustration, she types with her foot, God is a fly on the wall, bring me a fly swatter. And she tries to commit suicide. This struggle, this pain, all the way through the movie, all the way through her life, but the beauty of her gradually emerging into who she is. She became a well-known writer, developed relationships with others, And you get to see this taking place, and you get caught up in it, along with all the pain of it. And the realization that all the pain had been a part of it. Till at the end of the movie, these few words from her that has stayed with me. How can I scream when I can't even talk? How can I stop loving when I have the heart and the seed of a woman within me? The world is so full of many things I cannot be, nor will I ever be. God, give me the strength to be what I am. Yes. That's my prayer for all of you today. God, give me the strength to be what I am. Amen.